If you have ever apologized for walking through a door at the same time as someone else. If you have ever said sorry when someone bumped into you. If you have ever apologized for having feelings, for having an opinion, for needing something, or for simply being present in a room where you felt like you did not belong, then you already know what this is. It is not politeness. It is not good manners. It is a deeply embedded psychological reflex that was installed before you had the language to understand what was happening to you. Every time you say sorry without reason, you are not apologizing for a behavior. You are apologizing for yourself, for your existence, for the space you occupy. Oh, for the audacity of being a person with needs in a world that taught you those needs are an inconvenience. And the tragedy is that you have said it so many times that it no longer feels like a conscious choice. It is automatic, reflexive, as involuntary as breathing. You apologize before your brain has even registered what you are apologizing for. This is not a small thing. This is a window into a psychology that runs far deeper than most people realize. And once you understand where it comes from, you will never hear the word sorry the same way again. This is the psychology of people who apologize for everything. Let us start here. You are not crazy for doing this. You are not weak, and you are not overly sensitive. What you are is someone whose earliest experiences taught you that your presence could be a problem. And sorry became your way of preemptively managing that problem. Psychologists refer to this as appeasement behavior. In the animal kingdom, appeasement gestures are submissive signals that a less dominant animal sends to a more dominant one to avoid conflict. Dogs do it by lowering their body and showing their belly. Humans do it by apologizing. And in both cases, the function is the same. I am not a threat. Please do not hurt me. I will make myself smaller so that you feel bigger. This is survival, not politeness. Research published in the journal Psychological Science found that chronic apologizers tend to have elevated levels of rejection, sensitivity, a psychological trait where the brain is hyper-attuned to signs of disapproval. People with high rejection sensitivity do not just notice when someone is upset. They assume they caused it. And sorry becomes the fastest way to de-escalate a threat that may not even exist. This rejection sensitivity is not random. It is a learned response that develops in childhood when a child's primary attachment figures were unpredictable in their approval. If love was conditional, if attention had to be earned, if a parent's warmth could be withdrawn without warning, the child learns to constantly monitor the emotional atmosphere and take preemptive action to maintain safety. Sorry becomes their first line of defense, not against an external threat, but against the internal terror of being abandoned, rejected, or unseen. And by adulthood, it has become so automatic that the person does not even recognize they are doing it until someone points it out. And even then, the first thing they say is sorry for apologizing so much. This pattern is almost always born in a childhood where the child's emotional needs were treated as a burden. In some families, the message was explicit. You are causing problems. You are being difficult. Why do you always have to make everything about you? In these families, the child learns very quickly that having needs creates conflict. And the easiest way to avoid conflict is to preemptively take responsibility for everything, even things that are not their fault. In other families, the message was implicit. The parent was struggling, depressed, overwhelmed, or absent, and the child could see that any additional demand on the parent's energy was unwelcome. The child did not need to be told they were a burden. They could feel it. And so they began to shrink. Yet they stopped asking for things. They stopped expressing preferences. They started apologizing for the space they took up, because even their basic existence felt like it was asking too much. There is also a common pattern in families with a dominant personality, often one parent who had an explosive temper or a narcissistic dynamic. In these families, the child learns that the dominant person's mood is the weather. When that person is happy, everyone is safe. When that person is upset, someone is going to be blamed. and the child who apologizes first avoids being the target. Over time, this becomes a deeply conditioned reflex. The child does not wait to see if they did something wrong. They apologize in advance, just in case. Sorry becomes their shield, their offering, their ticket to temporary safety. And by the time they are adults, the reflex is so ingrained that they apologize for things that no reasonable person would consider their fault. They apologize for the rain. They apologize for traffic. They apologize for asking a question at a store. They apologize for their own emotions. They apologize for apologizing. And each time they do, they are not addressing the present moment. They are addressing a childhood where their very existence required justification. The cruelest part is that this pattern often makes them extraordinarily kind. Because they are so terrified of causing discomfort, they go out of their way to make everyone around them feel at ease. And the world rewards this. The world calls them sweet, thoughtful, considerate. And the person hears these words and thinks, good, they are not upset. I am safe for now. People who apologize for everything follow a set of deeply consistent patterns that govern their relationships, their work, and their inner life. The first is preemptive damage control. They do not wait for conflict to arise. They manage it before it begins. They over-explain. They soften every statement. They hedge every opinion. If they express a preference, they immediately follow it with, but it is totally fine if you disagree. They are managing other people's reactions before those reactions even occur. The second is responsibility absorption. If something goes wrong in a group setting, they are the first to accept blame, even when the fault clearly lies elsewhere. This is not selflessness. This is self-protection. Taking the blame feels safer than waiting to see who gets blamed. At least this way, they control the narrative. The third pattern is language minimization. They make themselves smaller through words. I am just wondering. I just wanted to ask, I know this is probably a dumb question, but these hedging phrases are not accidents. They are strategic reductions of self-importance designed to make the other person feel unthreatened. The fourth pattern is delayed resentment. Because they suppress their own needs and apologize for their own feelings, the unexpressed frustration accumulates. And eventually, it surfaces as resentment toward the very people they have been accommodating. They feel angry, and then feel guilty for feeling angry, and then apologize for the anger. The cycle is self-perpetuating. The fifth pattern is difficulty receiving criticism. Paradoxically, people who apologize constantly are often devastated by actual criticism. Because they spend their entire lives trying to prevent anyone from being displeased with them, the slightest indication that someone is genuinely unhappy with them triggers a disproportionate emotional response. The apology reflex was supposed to prevent this. And when it fails, the person does not just feel criticized, they feel existentially unsafe. Research on chronic apologizing reveals connections to several well-documented psychological frameworks. Studies on fawning, the fourth trauma response alongside fight, flight, and freeze, describe it as an automatic behavior where the individual seeks to please and appease in order to avoid conflict or threat. Psychotherapist Pete Walker, who coined the term, describes fawning as the most overlooked trauma response because it is socially rewarded. The chronic apologizer is often praised for being agreeable and accommodating, which reinforces the very behavior that is causing them internal distress. Research published in the journal Self and Identity found that individuals who engage in excessive apologizing report lower self-esteem, a weaker sense of personal identity, and higher rates of anxiety. The study found a direct correlation between apology frequency and the degree to which the individual felt their authentic self was invisible or unwelcome. Attachment theory research has shown that chronic apologizing is strongly associated with anxious attachment style. Individuals with anxious attachment are hypervigilant to signs of relational threat and use appeasement behaviors, including apologies, compliments, and self-deprecation, to maintain closeness with their attachment figures. A neuroimaging study found that individuals with high rejection sensitivity show increased amygdala activation in response to ambiguous social cues. Their brain interprets neutral facial expressions as potentially hostile. This means that the person who apologizes for everything is not overreacting. Their brain is literally perceiving threats that others do not see. And the apology is the brain's attempt to neutralize a threat that feels very real internally, even if it does not exist externally. Let us be specific about what this looks like in real life. It looks like starting every text message with sorry for the late reply, even when you responded within an hour. It looks like ordering food at a restaurant and saying sorry before telling the server your order, as if choosing from the menu is an inconvenience. It looks like somebody stepping on your foot and you apologizing to them. It looks like sending a message asking for something you need and then immediately following it with, "Sorry, I know you are busy. No rush at all. Do not worry if you cannot. It is really not a big deal." 4 qualifications for a simple request. 4 reductions of your own importance before the other person has even responded. It looks like crying and apologizing for crying simultaneously. It looks like getting hurt and saying sorry for being hurt. It looks like being the one who was wronged and still finding a way to make it your fault. Because somewhere in the architecture of your psychology, being at fault is safer than being a victim. Because at least when it is your fault, you can fix it. And beneath all of this is a child standing in a room that was too big for them, looking at an adult whose approval meant everything, and saying the words that seemed to make everything better, even though they cost a little piece of the child every time they were spoken. I am sorry. I am sorry. I am sorry. Not for anything they did, but for who they were. The world tells chronic apologizers to just stop apologizing. And this advice, while well-intentioned, completely misses the point. Telling someone to stop apologizing without addressing why they apologize is like telling someone to stop limping without treating the injury. The apology is not the problem. The apology is the symptom. The problem is the core belief that says, I am an inconvenience. I am a burden. My existence requires constant justification. Until that belief is addressed, the person will not stop apologizing. They will just find other ways to shrink. They will stop voicing opinions. They will stop making requests. They will stop taking up space in conversations. The apology will go underground, but the self-erasure will continue. The world also gets wrong who these people are. It assumes they are timid, passive, and submissive, but many chronic apologizers are high-achieving, outwardly confident, and socially skilled. They have simply learned that competence and self-diminishment can coexist. They excel at everything except advocating for themselves. And perhaps the most harmful misunderstanding is that this behavior is harmless. It is not. Chronic apologizing erodes self-worth over time. Each unnecessary apology reinforces the neural pathway that says you are not enough. And that pathway, reinforced thousands of times over decades, becomes the foundation of a self-concept built entirely on inadequacy. If this is you, here is where change begins. First, start noticing. Before you try to stop, simply observe. Count how many times you apologize in a day. Notice what triggers each apology. Notice the feeling that precedes it. This awareness alone begins to create space between the impulse and the action. Second, replace sorry with thank you. Instead of sorry for talking too much, try thank you for listening. Instead of sorry for being late, try thank you for waiting. This linguistic shift does not just change the words. It changes the power dynamic. It moves you from a position of deficit to a position of gratitude, which is fundamentally different from shame. Third, practice the pause. When the urge to apologize rises, pause for 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, ask yourself one question. Did I actually do something that requires an apology? If yes, apologize genuinely. If no, let the moment pass. 3 seconds of pause can interrupt decades of conditioning. Fourth, begin the deeper work. Explore the childhood experiences that installed this pattern. Work with a therapist who understands fawning, anxious attachment, and complex trauma. Begin to build a self-concept that is not dependent on the approval of others. You have spent your life apologizing for being alive, and you have paid for it with your sense of self. It is time to stop paying a debt you never owed. If you have listened to this entire thing and felt something break open inside you, do not apologize for it. Do not apologize for feeling seen. Do not apologize for needing this. Do not apologize for being a person who has spent their life trying to make everyone else comfortable at the cost of their own comfort. You are not too much. You are not an inconvenience, and the space you occupy in this world is yours by right, not by permission. You do not need to earn the air you breathe. You do not need to justify your presence in a room, and you do not need to shrink so that someone else can feel bigger. The word sorry was meant for moments when you have genuinely caused harm. It was never meant to be the opening line of your existence. And every time you stop yourself from saying it unnecessarily, you are not being rude. You are reclaiming a piece of yourself that was taken a very long time ago. You are allowed to exist without apology. This is unspoken minds. And you have nothing to be sorry for.